All right, we are about to unpack a story that honestly feels like it's straight out of a tech thriller. We're talking about two of the biggest rivals on the entire planet, a colossal capability gap, and a secret billion-dollar deal that could totally reshape the future of AI. This is the inside story of how Apple and Google forged an alliance that absolutely nobody saw coming. You know, at the very heart of this story, you've got two completely opposite ways of thinking. I mean, on one side, you have Apple, a company that built its entire brand on being this impenetrable fortress of user privacy. And then on the other side, you have Google, the undisputed AI powerhouse, built on the open cloud and just massive amounts of data. For years, these two ideas seemed like oil and water. They were totally incompatible until, well, they weren't. So how in the world did we get here? Well, it all kicks off with this fundamental clash of architectures. We're talking about Apple's privacy-first, walled garden approach going head-to-head with Google's incredibly powerful open cloud. So Apple's strategy, which they've branded Apple Intelligence, it's all built around a pretty small 3 billion parameter model. Now, you can think of parameters as kind of like the neurons in an AI's brain. And this one was specifically designed to run right there on your device. It's super private, it's fast for simple stuff, but that absolute commitment to privacy, it also became its biggest weakness. And then you have Google. Their approach with Gemini is the polar opposite. It is all about raw power and speed, and it's delivered straight from the cloud. Models like Gemini 2.5 Pro are absolute monsters of capability, and you can access them from anywhere with an internet connection. Google basically chose power over privacy by design, and that made its AI everywhere and incredibly powerful. And this is what leads us to the central problem. While Apple was so carefully building up its privacy walls, this huge capability gap was forming. The fortress was totally secure, sure, but it was also getting left in the dust. It desperately needed a bridge to the outside world of modern AI. And here it is, the breaking point. The planned reinvention of Siri, the one everyone was waiting for, it just stalled. And why? Well, the simple, hard truth was that their private, on-device AI just wasn't strong enough for the complex things we expect a modern assistant to do. Apple had a real crisis on its hands. This timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? While Google was out there learning and iterating at lightning speed with its whole fail-fast philosophy, Apple's super cautious path led to internal struggles and, ultimately, a critical product delay. Pushing the Siri overhaul to 2026 wasn't just, a missed deadline. It was basically them admitting they needed help. And that brings us to the climax of the story. With its back against the wall, Apple did the unthinkable. It led to a billion-dollar handshake that created one of the most unlikely and frankly shocking alliances in the history of tech. So on November 5th, 2025, the news dropped like an absolute bombshell. Apple, the company that champions doing everything in-house, was going to license its chief rival's AI technology to power its most important features. This was a massive moment, a strategic surrender just to close that gap. And just think about the scale of this for a second. The deal is valued at about $1 billion annually. That's not just a partnership. That is a massive validation of Google's tech and a huge new revenue stream for their AI division. So what does $1 billion a year get you? Well, it gets you a custom Gemini model with 1.2 trillion parameters. Now remember Apple's native 3 billion parameter model? This is like trading in a go-kart for a Formula One engine. It is an absolutely insane leap in raw power. So the billion-dollar question, right, is how does Apple do this without completely destroying its brand promise of privacy? The answer, it turns out, is in an incredibly clever piece of engineering that lets them have their cake and eat it too. It all comes down to this one term, private cloud compute, or PCC. The best way to think of it is as a digital black box. It's a secure, totally isolated cloud environment that Apple built and that Apple completely controls. This is the linchpin. This is the piece of tech that makes the entire deal work. Okay, so let's trace the data. A complex Siri request leaves your phone, but instead of going to Google, it gets routed to Apple's private servers, into that black box. And that's where the magic happens. Google's powerful Gemini model runs inside Apple's secure environment to process your query. The end result? Google provides the engine, but they never, ever get to see the fuel, which, of course, is your personal data. This table just lays out the trade-offs perfectly. I mean, look at model size and context window, which is basically the AI's short-term memory. For simple tasks, Apple's little on-device model is totally fine. But for anything that needs complex reasoning or a big memory, they just couldn't compete. Gemini's cloud power was the missing piece of the puzzle. So what does this whole new reality actually mean for the future? Well, this deal hasn't ended the AI arms race, not by a long shot. It has completely redefined the battlefield for 2026 and for years to come. You see, the fight isn't just about who has the biggest model anymore. Now it's about platform control. Apple's big advantage is its total end-to-end control over the hardware, the user interface, and that all-important PCC infrastructure. Meanwhile, Google's advantage is its insane speed, its huge developer ecosystem, and its leadership in setting the pace for what AI can do next. And this key piece of analysis really says it all. Apple made a very calculated choice. They decided to temporarily give up their prized technical independence to avoid falling disastrously behind in what is the most important technology race of our lifetime. It was a pragmatic move, and it was born out of pure necessity. So the bottom line for all of us, for you, is this. The next time you use Siri on a new iPhone and it does something just incredibly smart, remember this wild alliance. You'll be using the power of Google's AI brain, but it's going to be running safely inside the walls of Apple's privacy fortress. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future, one to chew on. As these AI models become more like a commodity, something anyone can license, does the real power shift? Is the infrastructure that secures and protects our data ultimately more important than the AI model itself? It's definitely something to think about.